if I start recording. Okay, so now our main task is today that we learn how to develop a very simple basic application using Android Studio. Very first, very basic application. So I will be explaining how you understand the UI of Android Studio, how we develop our first application, a very simple Hello World application within our Android Studio. Okay, so let's begin. So now once you run your Android Studio for very first time, like I've said previously, do ensure and do be patient that it will install and download few more files while it is running online. Okay, for the first time. So you do again need an active internet connection. So understand that, and for Android, you would be required at initial stages, you would require internet connection to be active, so that while it's running for the first time, it goes into the system, downloads the file, and install those files for you. Once those processes complete and your all files are done, then it's all okay. Then you can go and proceed, and then it doesn't require internet every single time. Okay, but for the first few days of the first few runs, you might feel that it is constantly downloading. So that's one thing. Second, when we come into our new window, new project, we are presented with our basic interface. Now this interface identifies what is to be done when you want to develop an application. First thing, are you developing application for your phone, where operating system, which basically is your mobile smartwatches, okay, Android TV or automobile. Okay, so if you're developing for automobile, some basic preset is given. If you're developing for Android preset is given. iOS, smartwatches, smartwatch preset is given. Primarily, we will be working with phone devices. So when you click on phone devices, you will find there are several different activities that are presented to us that you can use to develop. Those activities from no activity to basic activity to bottom navigation, where there is already bottom buttons, empty activity, to all these different activity windows are there. We will talk about them as gradually as we proceed. We currently start with something called empty activity. Excuse me. So the first thing is we select the basic activity, go on next. As soon as we go on next, this will ask me your application name. So I said, give my application as BS software part 3 underscore MOR morning underscore dice. Okay. So I create this first application. And this becomes my name. Now, be it ensured that you don't give what we call spaces within your application name. Application name is the name of application by which it you install, you run, and you configure your entire application. So when you install an application, you see an application name, that is your application name here. So you give the name very carefully. We can change it later on as well, but it creates more complications because as you can see, package name, it says com.example BS software part 3 morning dice. Means your project name becomes your package name. So if you change your project name later on, your package name becomes different. So you will have to change your package name, and then all the dependencies that follow along needs to be again changed, which creates more complications. So always recommended that you give your name very carefully initially and you don't change it later on. Then package name auto given, don't tamper with it. Location, where do you want to save your project? So I have already created a D drive Android class folder. Again, no spaces in your name, no spaces in your package name, no spaces in your location as well, because then location will be used as your project directory. So Android says that location istemal nahi karni, or space istemal nahi karna bhai. Okay? Android requires you that you don't use any spaces. Simple as that. Then language, which language you want to use? Primarily, and Google now prefers Kotlin. For our sake, we will be using Java, because hopefully you have already understood and done Java previously as well. Okay? So क्योंकि हमने जावा ऑलरेडी प्रीवियस क्लास में पढ़ी हुई है, तो हम जावा ही को इस्तेमाल करेंगे, हमारे लिए जरा ज़हनी तौर पे आसान हो जाएगा. Second, Java is a quite old language for even Android as well. Since the day one, Android is being using Java, so it has a larger community, larger support system. So any problem, any confusion you run into, you just Google it, you get a solution for it. Kotlin is fairly new and it has considerably not such a strong support and community, as far as my opinion is concerned. Everybody has agreed to disagree. So we will prefer Java in a short term. Now, the most important thing when we create a new project at the initial level is which SDK you want to use. The Android software development kit supporting system that you want to use for your application. As we know, Android has been gradually updating its Androids with every alternate year. It launches a new software, or almost every year it launches a new SDK, new version of Android. So if it launches a new version of Android, at the back end, it requires the software development kit for that particular version. Now, when you as a developer develop an Android application, you need to understand which version of software development kit or which version of Android you are basically using. For the main purpose that if I select 21 Android 5 Lollipop, it will tell you that 94% of the devices are supporting 5 device. So this basically means that Android API 21 or Android API 5 Lollipop version, if I use this and all the latest versions will be compatible with my software. So my software will be able to run on any device that has Android 5 or the latest version. Okay, but if I choose the latest version, I said I want to use the Android, for example, 28.9 Android Pie. So I said, okay, I want to use that. But as soon as I click that, it will tell you that unfortunately, only 40% of the known world devices use Android 9 Pie version and are compatible with it. So if you develop an application, you launch it on Play Store, you would be focusing on only 40% of the world who are using these devices as per Google statistics. Okay. So that creates a problem because remaining 60% people are not using your device. That's a big issue. So that's why we need to be very careful that my device is supporting on which level of Android SDK. If you choose the most latest, fantastic, but only less than 1% are using it. If you use, for example, 10, only 8% are using it. So what I personally follow, I always go for Android 21 5% value. From this point on, the Android SDK had already previous version. From this point on, it had major changes. So this is more supporting and compatible version in my case. And it has a good 94% chances of world will be using it. Okay. So I'm targeting almost 94% of the world mobile devices. For me, it's satisfactory. I can go even back as well. So once you start a new project, for every project, you have to do that. That's why we keep in mind. So for a new project, you go for a new version, but for certain projects, you can go for older versions. In our case, I say Android API 25 version is what I will be using. So this is what I recommend. Okay. So these are the basic initial settings, your name, your package name, location, where you want to save your project, language Java, and the APIs that you want to use. Just 5 seconds, but explanation, I had to explain a few things, so we go for it. Okay. So once I click on next and finish, now what it will do, you can see at the bottom, the Gradle build is being done. Now Android Studio will go, it will build my project, it will import all the files and the settings and the packages that are required in my application and include it in the project folder window. Okay, so for that, it takes certain time. Okay, so you can see this, I'm already like few minutes into it and it's still waiting, a few seconds and still waiting. Okay, so you will have to be patient with Android. That's the first thing I said earlier, and I say it again. When you're working with Android Studio, be patient with time because it can take sometimes a larger amount of time. Okay, so what we did now is we have Android, we see BS software part 3 morning, we have a basic application project window, we get our basic activity window. Okay, so basically what we have now is a basic default first window that you will see when you start Android Studio. Within this, there are two things that you are focused with. First thing is called your project window. This will tell us the hierarchy of the files and the project window, project resources that we are basically using. I will get into this thing more later on. On the left or on the right side, basically you get tabs for two files. One is the main activity window. Second is the main activity Java window. This is called activity main XML file. This is called main activity Java file. So two files are created. One is activity main. Second is main activity. Okay, they are both brothers, twin brothers, activity main and main activity. One is XML, one is Java. This is the most essential point that you need to remember. The first time, why there are two files. One is known as activity main, second is main activity. Activity main is XML file that you use for design purpose. we design our Android GUI using this XML. Main activity is Java file. That main activity file is used for the backend control of your user design. So all the main activities, the events, the controlling, the coding, the reading of the data, the processing of data is done using Java inside the main activity file. However, you use activity main.xml for design purpose and obviously for various different control elements as well. So you will, that's two main things. So XML file we use for design purpose. We will get into details and what we can do and what cannot do in each file. So don't worry about that. Initially, just keep things in mind. Whenever we start the project, भाईजान हमें दो फाइलें दी गई हैं. एक फाइल के अंदर हमने XML के थ्रू डिजाइन करना है, दूसरी फाइल के अंदर हमने जावा के थ्रू उसको कंट्रोल करना है, कोडिंग करना है, लॉजिक देनी है. सिंपल. Okay? So that's why there are two files here. Then when I select the main activity file, because this is going to do the designing, so what we get here is the design elements. Android पे काम करना किसी हद तक आसान और मजेदार इसीलिए भी हो जाता है कि आपको हर चीज मैन्युअली कोड करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. उसका इंटरफेस बनाने के लिए उस भाई ने सारी चीजें सामने रख दी, आपने सिंपली ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप करना है. All you need to do now is simply, all the components are here. You just simply drag and drop those components. That's it. And then use the activity Java code to control all the events and activities that are being performed. Okay. So we start with our first basic app now. When we want to develop the first basic app, you would see that my main activity is inside com.example.bs software dice folder, whereas this main activity.xml file, oopsie daisy, sorry, if I click on the project, this activity.xml file is in sometime called resources, inside layouts, activity.xml file. We will talk about project folders more as we go along, but the main thing to remember is that there are two things. One is Java project, one is resource project. Java project has something called your main activity Java code. Resource has the resources such as your images, your pictures, your layouts, your animations, and your actual UI interface as a resource is available inside this. So these two files are by default created for us. You can see this in your project window. When you come here, this is our palette. This is what we use for creating our components. You will find there are common components, text field, various different type of text fields, buttons, widgets, layouts, containers, helpers, and so on and so forth. All we need to do is we need to just drag and drop these components here, and these components will be placed. Then once these are there, we come down into this bottom. This is called componentry view. This panel allows you to control and view your components in a hierarchy. Know which components you have created, under which hierarchy they have been created, under which activity panel has they been created. Okay. So once we create the object, this is like our table of contents, that you have these objects under these chapters, under these segments. So they become your book components. They give you a tree structure. In Android Studio, everything that we create, every button, every text field is known as a component. Keep this thing in mind. I will be using this regularly. Everything inside Android you create is known as a component. So every button, every menu that I create is considered as a component. Even the layouts and the containers. Now, these are two things we will talk separately on them later on. Containers and layouts. Initially, we work with layouts. Layout basically give and control the overall layout of your UI components. How you basically are controlling it. Because we have multiple devices, multiple platforms, multiple screen sizes, this layout is absolutely essential to understand and work with, so that your app appears exactly same and with correct layout structure on every single mobile device. Okay. So, but as I said, don't worry about that. We are just building the first app. We will be talking about layouts and containers as we go along. In this case, we have a constraint layout already installed for us. Within this constraint layout, you can see this hierarchy shows that it's little tab. It shows that inside this constraint layout, we have something called text field. Let me delete it. So I right click and delete. So there is no component now created here except the constraint layout. Okay. So now I come inside the text field. I click and drag and create the text field here. Simple as that. That's all it takes in order to create and design your entire Android application. All you need to think about is that, okay, first thing I need to go into my interface. It might look very complex, very daunting. There's a lots of tools there, but be very relaxed. Okay. Don't be intimidated, like I said. Don't think, oh my God, there's so many tools here. Just be very focused that, okay, within this, I have project window, my structure of files are displayed here. When I select the activity main XML, I get the palette, I get the component tree. If I go into main activity, now only code, because this is the backend Java code. Within this, I have everything available. So all the designing goes here. I do the designing right here. In this palette is there component trees, components are there that will organize and structure my component. These two views, now these two are the actual view and the component segment view. Okay. Actual view means that this is my actual final layout. This is the structural layout of my components. We use this to understand that which component we have created and how they are structured. And this is the final layout. Okay. Again, don't confuse. Let's just keep things very simple. I've created a button here. Let me create a button here. Sorry. So if I come here, drag and drop and create a button here. There we go. A button is created. So I select the text field. I bring the text field here. As simple as that. Then let's just do one more thing. Okay. In order to ensure that my components are properly structured and properly organized, what we do is we work with something called constraints and attributes. So once I create a component, I have something called attributes. So we have project window, we have palettes, components, the layout, and something called attributes. These are 4 different segments that we will be switching and working back and forth with. Okay. We design the components here. We use this palette to create the component. We structure our components here to understand how it's being done. We select various different components from here as well. We do the designing and drag and drop and placement of where we want the component. Then to customize each component, we use this attribute editor. We use this attribute panel to customize the components, its values, its parameters, its settings. Okay. So for example, I have a text field. I want to change this. I said, okay, come down here. This should be my heading. So I said BS software morning dice application. Okay. So I place this at the top. This becomes my heading of my application. That's very good, fantastic. All it is done, simple as that. Now, one other thing we need to do whenever we work with this application or the components using constraint layout is that we need to constrain. See this red box button here. If I scroll up, you would see constraint error is there. It says that you have placed a component, but you have not constrained it. Constraint means that, for example, you have 2 objects. You want to constrain object 1 with object 2. So wherever object 1 goes, object 2 follows. Like you are sitting inside a car. Once you are inside a car, you are physically inside a car. Okay, so wherever the car goes, you are moving physically with the car. However, if I have 2 pens, this is main pen, this is the second pen. They are not physically connected. There is no physical connection between them. What I want is that this is the main, this becomes the constraint object. So I constrain this with the pen. Now, wherever the main pen goes, this object is supposed to follow. Okay, there is no physical connection. There is only constraints. So that what basically means that we bind one object with another object, not physically, virtually. So wherever the first object goes, the second follows. So this is done because every single mobile application is of a different size. I have one mobile, this is of a different size, another mobile is a different size. So when we place the components on our mobile phone screens, they all should look correctly, properly in the same place, regardless of the screen size. That is why the layouts and the constraint layout is very essential to follow. Now, in order to use the constraint, nothing to worry. The only thing we do is we select the component, we come here, this is the constraint widget, either from here or from here. We just say that, okay, constrain this object to this point. Now what happened? The object has been constrained. See this value 0, 0 has been given. All done. If I want to be on the center, I would say, okay, constrain this on the right as well. Sorry. Yes. So now 0 from 0 here, and object is at the middle. So half is left, half is right. My object has been constrained, and now you see this blue spring. This indicates your object has been constrained. It says not vertically constrained here. That means that you still need to do one vertical constraint for that object as well. So I constrained it from top. But I don't want to be exactly at the top. I want to be from space. So I come here and I can say 25. So now it gives 25 space of pixels and the object is placed here. What this will mean that on every single device, my component will be exactly at the same place, regardless of the screen size. This is what constraint will do. Similarly, if I come onto the button, again, same concept. Drag and drop at the bottom, it's constrained at the bottom. Drag and drop at the left, now it's constrained at the left. Maybe I want it here. Maybe I wanted the center of the screen, click and drag, now it's constrained at the center. If I want it to be a little bit upwards, I will drag it here. See this value 108. So 108 is automatically inserted here. This now means that my object will be constrained automatically at this point. So now you can see the difference between these two as well. This is the final layout. This is the structural layout of how your components are being organized. This becomes more useful when you have large number of quantities available here. Okay, let's place an image. So I come here and I say, where is my image button? Image view. So widgets, my image view. So let me click and drag and drop an image here. As soon as I drag and drop an image here and pick resources button appears. So for example, at that moment, I don't have any particular resource available in this thing. So what I do is I said, okay, cancel. Okay, and I cancel it. So I need to have an image. So I need to do what I need to do is I go inside here and very quickly, let me just go inside my pictures. Let me bring up a JPG. Usually it supports a JPG. So do ensure that you have a JPEG file available. Is this JPG? This is PNG. Where's my JPEG from? This is JPG. So let me use this thing. Okay. So, or in fact, this is also JPG, right? Perfect. So let's just use this as your JPG file. So I copy this, Control C, come inside my Android Studio, go inside something called drawable and right click and paste it here. Okay. As soon as I click paste, Control V or right click paste, it will ask me whether you want to be in drawable or drawable version 24. So I said, no, give me just drawable, this same folder. Now, all your resources, all your images, all your pictures, all your animations are supposed to be saved in this drawable folder. Keep this thing in mind. Then in small letters without spaces, in small letters without spaces. So I said, okay, no problem. This is all small letters and spaces. Click OK. This file has been copied here. Now I go back into my main activity, widgets, image view, drag and drop my image view here. This should be here, IKSP59. So I said, perfect. Click open and that image is available now. Now what I need to do is, because it's there, I need to constrain it to a particular point. So I said it should be here. And let me just click on this button. So this time, in order to constrain, I didn't use the drag and drop here. I used these blue buttons here. 0, 0, this has been constrained. At the top, it has been constrained. And let me just bring it upwards a little bit. And this constrained at the bottom as well. Okay. So now what this basically means that this component has been constrained with respect to the space with this button and from the top and left. So no matter where you go, you will get this application in form of that. I have this dice available. I want to change the font size. So we can do it from the settings here. Or one thing we can do is you select this font. Okay. And you go inside your code view. So, or split view. So if I click on the split view on the top right corner, you will see that within your activity, all the things that you did, you get an XML code for it. Android does the coding for you when you design the component. But it's essential to understand what is happening. It is doing constrained layout. It has its own certain settings. Then within the constrained layout, we have created a text field. We have created a button. We have created an image. It wrote the code automatically. So if I go into design view, these are three things. Inside the constraint view, text field, button, image view. Perfect. I hope you understand the basic things. Okay. So the same thing is being done here. Now, in order to change the font size, I come here and I say text size. So text size is available. I will say, for example, 30 SP. Okay, I think 30 become a little bit bigger, 25 SP. Now SP is basically scale independent parameter. Usually we use DPI or pixels. Pixel basically in mobile phones we don't prefer because every screen has a different pixel size. Every screen has different resolution as well. So if you use pixel, it becomes very specifically constrained. So what we do is we scale independent screen sizes preferred SP for size. So now BS software part DICE application has been created. Here is my logo and that. So I added this one line to change the text size. Similarly, I can add many other lines to alter and work within these things, but we will get into coding later on. So now we have all done. Split design code is there. Let's run this application. In order to run this application, I had told you yesterday that we also need something called the AVD or the virtual simulator. To run this application, we go inside the AVD device, making sure that our AVD has been installed. If this is not installed, click on create virtual device. Select the phone type you want to use. You need a simulator so your code can run on that. You can test the final output of the code. So you need a virtual simulator. You click on the Pixel 5, you go on to the next or any other device. In my case, I'm using Pixel 4a, 5.8-inch screen. You can go for 6-inch screen. You can say Pixel XL or any other 5-inch screen if you want to use. For me, this becomes fine. So when I click on, for example, 5a, next, it will again ask you to download. This thing I've already downloaded. So there's no download here. But for these other APIs, it again asks you which API you want to use. Whichever API you're using, you but need to download it for that particular mobile device compatibility. Okay. So we need to download. So again, you need internet. Like I said, be patient with it. You would be required internet multiple times. So you select download, it will download, wait for a few minutes. Once it is downloaded, click on next. Next, and it will install this device for you. Okay. Once it is installed, close it. You will see this device name here. Click on play button. Once you click on play button, your emulator should run. If you run at the bottom, you see Gradle building. Now, what is Gradle building? Gradle building is like compiling. If you're using JDK, we use JDK in Java to compile and execute the code. In Android Studio, we use Gradle, which will take your files, your interface, your XMLs, and compile and create an APK for you. And in that APK is then automatically installed in this emulator and is run by that emulator. So Gradle is primarily responsible for creating an APK. We know Android Studio uses APK as your file. So it is still installing. Gradle is building. Wait for it. Be patient with Android. Okay. So see, Gradle is running. I'm sure it's still in the installation phase, or has it been completed? Now it's going into install. So if you check at the bottom, you see it has been installed, and now my application is running because it's being done for the first time. Be patient with it, and voila, my application BS Software Morning Part 3. This is my application name. Don't worry about that. We will work on this later on. And my button is there. My interface has been created as beautifully as this can be done. Finally, what we need, I need something. Okay, so this is my application running in my Android Studio. If this is not running, you need to ensure that Android Studio is running. And in alternate case, then we will go into virtualization and see if my processor is supporting virtualization or not. Okay. For now, my first basic default application has been created. It is running perfectly done. Okay. SP. Now, in last lecture, continuing from there, we developed this basic application. Okay. This is a very simple application that uses a constraint layout that has a title and an image and a button to it. Currently, there is no event driven to it. And continuing from there, now we will add a very quick link to this particular button. So whenever we change or click on button, certain event occurs. Okay. Now, there was a question that what is SP? So if I come into the split code button here at the top right corner, you would note that I had written this line of code here on this but text field. It says text size.sp. SP basically means scale independent. Remember, when we give text size in other applications, we use the word pixels. For example, if you have done in CSS, we use word pixel. If you use Microsoft Word, we use points. In mobile phones, the problem is that the screen size and resolution is different for almost every other company. Even within the company, there are hundreds of different screen sizes. So using pixel creates a problem of, or points creates the problem of limitation or limiting the screen font text size. So on each different size of screen, the font would be different. The size would be different. That would alter the layout of the entire application. So for example, in this SP is 12, but in this SP12 will be very small. So if I use or pixel 12, this is pixel 12. This is, for example, pixel 12 here. Here pixel 12 might be large. Here pixel 12 might be small because the resolution is different. So that is why we need to use a technology or a way in which the text appears exactly same size on both screens, so that the format of your components don't change. That is why we use something called SP. And similarly, there is DP as well, device independent. At certain component sizes, we use a term called DP. You would see here, layout margin top, there is DP here. SP is usually for text in terms of scale independent. DP is usually for display device, means display screen size independent. So margins are calculated independent of your screen size. It should always be 25. So in other words, Android has used its own unit system so that it can measure the screen size and use the value based on that. Okay. So I hope it explains. I will try to give more examples in future as well. Okay. So once we are over this, now what we basically need to do. Okay. So now what we basically need to do is we need to have some components here again. So I come back into my design view. I come into my text, click and drag and drop my text here. Okay. Sorry. And let's just keep a text field here. Okay. Once we are inside this text field, we need to do constraints as well. So you can do again constraint like we did in previous class by manual clicking it or clicking on this button here. Once you click on this button here, this will tell you 0. So it means 0 DP. Okay, DP, see this DP states here. So DP means display independent. So 0 pixels from your display device. So it doesn't matter how many pixel your display device is. Android uses its own unit, in other words, to calculate that it should be stuck with the left side. There is no space supposed to be here. But if I want the space here, I will say right side and left side. So this also needs to be 0. So now automatically the components are in the segments here. Okay, 0, 0 on the both sides. So this comes at the center location. Then I come back here and I can say, for example, text view, maybe 0. And the name of this text field, I can change ID here. Okay, so the ID is text view 2. What I do is I come here and I usually use txt dice number. Okay, so this becomes my text number. Similarly, I again go into split view and very quickly button, where is my button gone? Okay, so I just it just asked me that you have renamed it. You want to rename? I said yes, rename it. Text Android 0. I come here and I say text size. Again, I would just want to use, for example, 40 SP. So it becomes a larger number. We will play with this number later on. And now what I want, now what I want that when I click on this button, certain event should occur. Okay, so when I click on this event button, certain event should occur. So this is my button here. Okay. Now what I want that if I come inside my button here, I will come down and I will write on click. Okay. And on click, it should do what? I say roll dice. That's it. Okay. So inside the button, I added a code called on click roll dice. This is an on click event. This will basically mean that when user clicks on this button, what should happen? Okay. So in order to drive an event, what we need to do is we write a code that when user clicks on a button, what should happen? So I go inside this code level. I wrote a line called on click inside this button parameter. This basically means that when I click on this button, this method, this function will be executed. It giving me a red line. So it said, I don't find this button. Where is it? So we go inside the main activity. Okay. Inside the main activity, you will find there are import statements. There are public class main activity that extends an app compact activity class. This is again typical Java code. Within this, we have protected void on create. We will talk about life cycle in next class, so don't worry about that. Okay. So in the next lecture, we will upload regarding the life cycle of Android. We will discuss on create, on view, on display, and other on destroy, other things.
Okay, so now what we do, we come back here and we write a function called public void, for example, roll dice. This is the same function name that we wrote previously. Okay, once we are here, we will write a view, V-I-E-W, view. Now what this basically is, this is a view class of Java that will return the view of this particular code that we have already developed. Okay, so what this will do is it will take the view and all the components within this view and give it to Java. Remember, we are writing in two codes. One is in XML, one is in Java. So we need the components that we have written in XML in our Java code. In order to do that, we use something called view. Okay, so view will give us that control or the the view of the entire XML, and then we can use to pass the elements. So this is the roll dice method, the method that we use on the click button. So on this button we had given the roll dice. If I select this button again, we gave this method. So if I come back into activity now, I will say, okay, once you are here, what we need to do? We say that in order to do this or use this view, first we need to find the component that we want to work with. So we say text view. Okay, sorry, text view. Now this is again a built-in class in Java that will read individual components. Because we are reading text, so we are using a text view component. And I can say dice, because that's where we want find, is equals to, now we need to find this component. So as soon as I write find, it gives me a method called find view by ID. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to find a component on our XML file so we can work on that component. Which component we need? Okay, so it says use r.id.txt. If I write, it says dice number. So dice number is there. Give a semicolon. So now what happened is that we have told that find dice number by ID using .r and object which is set content layout. R is already given here. It's a built-in object. So we use this r.id.text number and then pass it to the find. So it will find this text from the XML, this component from the XML, and pass it to the text view object. This is a built-in class text view object. It should be imported. If it is not, you need to import it as well. Okay, if you get an error here that it's not available, if you click on there, it will give you information. So resolve this issue. Import this file here. Import Android text view. Because we have used view here, this is also again imported here. If it is not already imported, you need to write import Android view.view class as well. If you get a red line here, if you click on the red line or red button here, again it gets an error. So Android helps us in solving lots of errors as well. Okay, so at this time I'm not getting error, luckily. If you get error, do ensure you click on this button. It will automatically tell you how to fix it. Otherwise, make sure you write these two lines: import Android view and import Android.widget.text view. Once you write this, there should not be an error. Now what we did, this text view dice has the component. Now what we need to do, we need to write something onto that component. What should we write? That as soon as I click on this button, it should roll the dice and give me a number between 1 to 6. So let's just generate a random number now. Okay, so I come back here. In order to generate a random number, if you know your what we call Java, in Java we used to have something called double, and random number is equals to math.random function. So math.random function is available in Java. We just simply use the same Java code multiplied with 6 semicolon. By 6 means that it will start from 0 and multiplied with 6, 0, 0.1 and multiplied 6, it will give us a number between 0 and 6. Okay, so because we want a number between dice goes 6, so we want a number between 6. So this will give us something called a double value, because math.random always returns a decimal double value. Okay, so that's why we have used the double here. But I don't need double. Actually, the dice has to be numeric 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, but let's just see what we get here, and then we will convert it later on. So now what I need to do, I need to print this random number on my dice. Okay, I need to print this random number that I've generated onto this text field here. So what I do, I come back here and I say dice, this variable that I've just used, dot set text, simple as that, inverted quotations, plus, and use this random number. Okay, why I've used this plus? Because this is a text field, it requires a string. So we say that empty string plus whatever is the value of here should be printed on this dice. Voila. I think it should work fine. Let's just test it. Okay, so let me go and execute this code. It will go inside the Gradle build running. Okay, and UI, and let it load. This is example from a previous application that we were working on. So let's just wait because it's still Gradle is building. Okay, so that's why I said with Android you have to be patient. Sometimes it takes few minutes, and in this case it is taking few minutes. Okay, so now you can see my application is finally in a running state. I still wait few more seconds to let it complete all its operations. Launch succeeded. Let's just click on the button, and as you can see, as soon as I click on a button, every time it generates a random number. Perfect, exactly what we needed. But this is a decimal number, we don't need that. So let's just come back into the code, and what I need to do is I need to convert this double into an integer form. So I will use integer rand random number, rand int would be fine, is equals to, and I want to convert this random into a decimal value. So first I will use math.round to round this rand number. Okay, so it should be rounded off to a nearest integer number, and then convert or cast this into an integer. So what I did now here is that because it's a decimal number and I want something called, this is a decimal number, so I rounded off it to a nearest value, a single integer number, and then convert it or cast it into an integer. So this is called casting. If you have done Java, you would have remembered. Otherwise, in Java we do casting. So to cast basically means to convert one number form into second compatible form, and then assign it to this integer compatibility. So integer is here, and we have casted it into integer number. Now instead of using this random number, I will use random integer. That should do the trick. Once this is done, my application is here. Okay, but instead of rerunning it, I can just say click on this button, apply changes and restart activity. So as soon as I click on this button, let's go, it's applying changes, and my apply changes successfully, and it's been restarted. Now if I click a number, see this, I'm getting a random number. Beautiful. So every time I click on this button, it gives me a random number along with 0. I saw 0 couple of times. Here we go. So we know that in a dice there should not be a 0. Let's correct that issue again. So if I come down here into my random number, so mat.random multiply by 6. So every time it executes, it generates a number from 0 to 6. So what I do is I just do plus 1. What this will mean, that generate a number between plus 1, if it is 0 it will be 1 up till 6. Okay, and now if I execute it again from here, reload my interface, again Gradle is running, it's building, applying changes, everything is reset. Let's just wait few more seconds. Now if I apply, hopefully every time I click I will get a number between 0 and 6. Got it? Perfect. Okay, so my dice is now working. You can correct this activity. I can come here and select this button here. If I select the button, this is my button here. I can change the text from button to roll dice. I can come at the bottom. I can change the font size of this so that it appears a little bit bigger. So text appearance, inside text appearance size can be, for example, 25 sp so that it appears a bigger. I can select this component as well. This is already 40. I can set it to 50 sp so it becomes even bigger. I can increase the component size. I can select the button click on the corner boxes, I can increase the component size as well. So this becomes a very simple, quick application in which I am able to run my application, generate a random number. Now, because we have done +1, it might generate from 1 to 6 plus 1, 7. So we can use a condition as that if it's a 7, it should be -1 again. But you get the idea now. Okay, so now we have a simple code. Now what this code does is that every time user clicks on this button, this method gets executed. Within this executed, we use a function called text view. Text view is basically a component, a class built in Java that will hold a single component. Okay, what's a component? This is a single component. This is a single component. This is a single component. So what we said is that find that single component and then fed that single component inside my system. Okay, and we find that single component, assign that single component to this variable, then use this variable to do whatever we want. In this case, set text plus random value, and we use this to print these confirmations. So hopefully that should be explanatory. So we designed something in XML, we use Java to process it. From Java, we find the component that we want to work with using this method, and then we paste the code, read the code, and whatever component we want. Okay, so hopefully it should be a little explanatory. We will do more exercises on that to make, and we will be reusing this code again and again. That's all it takes. We just reviewed, and my application is finally complete. Okay, so if you have done it, try this application, leave your comments down below. Let me know if you have done it successfully. Still, that hooray, we did our first application, the dice was created. Okay, so leave your comments so I know that you have done it successfully or not. Any issue, any problem, again leave the comments and I will try to explain how we do that. Thank you very much. See you around in next class.